Okay, how many articles in the U.S. Constitution?
7.
How many?
7.
How many amendments?
27.
Say it again, how many?
27.
Okay, those two little questions, you know more about the Constitution than most Americans, most adults. I guarantee it. I do information tables. We did one in Boston. We asked questions, well, not really tough questions, like how many amendments, and some people say, huh? What's that? Are there 10? Are there 2? Are there 50? They don't have a clue. Ask them the lineup of the Boston Red Sox, they'll tell you. They'll tell you the whole lineup and their batting averages and the ERAs. But something as important as your owner's manual for a free people, they don't know. And that's why we're losing our freedom. So I want you to pull out your constitutions, and let's read Article 5. We're all there? Okay. Ready to roll? The Congress, whenever 2/3, read with me, of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution, or
which either case shall be valid to maintain shall be valid as part of the Constitution when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the federal states or by conventions in force thereof, as the one of ratification may be proposed prior to the year 1888 shall be that the first and fourth clauses of the 9th section of the first article, and that no state without consent shall be deprived of its equal suffrage.
And suffrage is a vote, by the way. All right. So the founders made it very difficult to amend the Constitution. That's a very good thing, because we've had hundreds of amendments proposed from the very beginning. Our Constitution would be unrecognizable if it was easy to pass. We wouldn't have a Republican form of government. We probably would have had 10 or 12 or maybe 50 different change of governments, like some countries, like Italy, for example, unstable. Now you notice when you read that, so the two ways to amend the Constitution. The first way, 2/3 of the House and Senate, U.S. House and Senate, have to approve amendment, and then it goes to the states for ratification, right? 3/4 of the states have to vote on it. And usually there's so many they give it 5 years or 7 years. The second way, which has never been done in our country, and we hope we never will have it done, is when the states make applications for a convention. And then the states will, some people refer to it as a constitutional convention or a con, or an Article 5 convention. We never had one. Now, it's constitutional, that's true. And it doesn't mean that they say, well, gee, why did the founders put it in there if we wouldn't want to use it? Well, they put in the Declaration of War in there too. Should we just declare war because we can? And someone accused me of they said I was a hypocrite because I was against the Article 5 procedure for a state convention. I said, I'm against the increase in taxes too, and that's constitutional. Congress can raise the taxes. So am I a hypocrite and unconstitutional because I'm against a tax increase? Well, okay, so they're using fallacious reasoning to promote a point here. So, and also the bottom part of the last part of that, it sounds a little confusing, where it says the exceptions, that no amendment which may be made prior to the year 1808 shall in any manner affect the first and fourth clauses of the 9th section. That dealt with the importation of slavery, and Congress in 1807 banned the importation of slavery without an amendment. So that's what that is about. The only duty of elected officials at the state level is to simply apply for a convention. It doesn't say anything in there about calling the shots. It doesn't say anything about how we're going to apply. The delegate's going to be chosen. It doesn't say anything about the agenda. It says that states will simply what? apply, right? An application, that's it. A lot of these legislators think that they're going to control the whole show. And by the way, if you take nothing else, the Constitution isn't the problem. It's the people that have been holding office that are the problem. We don't have a paper problem, we have a people problem. The Ten Commandments aren't always adhered to. So should we ask Moses to, hey, come on, go back up to the mountain, get a couple more, because we can't obey the 10 of them, so we got to modify them. Or maybe we'll call them the 10 suggestions. So what the history of the Article 5 Convention, even before the ink was even dry in the Constitution, 2 states had introduced resolutions. They were interested in getting a Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments. And by the way, that's another interesting question that most adults don't know. What are the first 10 amendments referred to? Okay, so the Bill of Rights. But there was a lot of people that had some strong concerns about that, including John Hancock, and we didn't have it. So anyway, so 2 states introduced it back in 1789. From 1890, since then, there's been over 600 applications for an Article 5. Some of them were constitutional, simply calling for an Article 5 without any stipulation of what the states wanted. But there's been resolutions to abolish slavery, which is a good thing, by the way. We're glad it happened. It's too bad we had to have a civil war to do that. But there's been resolutions to have a world government. The supporters of the Article 5 don't like to bring that one up. There was about 8 states that passed resolutions to change our Constitution to become part of a world government. There's been applications to give us an income tax, to repeal the income tax, et cetera, et cetera. But I want to point out, whatever that state's resolution reads, that this is the purpose of it, the only thing Congress will look at is the application itself. So everything else is null and void, or extra-constitutional. So from 1890 to about 1915, calls for an Article 5 convention for the direct election of senators. And they were about 2 states away when Congress went ahead and passed that amendment and brought it to the states. This was really outrageous because the states gave up an important part of their power or authority. States legislators used to appoint the U.S. senators, so they were basically ambassadors from the states to the central government, or to the national government, and now they're just they're just powerful members of Congress. And we're told today that a lot of these people, we have to rein back the federal government. Well, you use the Article 5 process to hurt that process. So states gave up a lot of their power. And when people tell you, there's no way any unreasonable amendment will be passed, that's not going to happen. It has happened. And I tell you what, there's a lot of unreasonable things that are going on without amendments, right? Bathroom bills. That's outrageous. Okay, so from the 1970s to the 1980s, we were 2 states away from a convention. And a lot of people were pushing for what they call a balanced budget amendment. Now that sounds pretty reasonable, doesn't it? Why would anybody who believes in fiscal conservatism, I don't really like that term because I think conservatism means everything's fiscal, right? Or social conservatives, right? Everything's social. It's not just about abortion and homosexuality. If I use the power of government to steal your money, is that morally wrong? Yes. Yeah, so that's social, isn't it? It's called legal plunder. So anyway, so 2 states away, but thankfully a number of states had rescinded their calls, and at one point we're down to about 17 applications. And I actually been involved in this since 1988. I think Mr. Everett was involved earlier than that. I had testified at state houses in New England and been doing press conferences and presentations. I must have given, I don't know, 50 or 60 presentations just in the last several years. We are facing a clear and present danger on our Constitution, literally on a chopping block, because right now we're probably 6 states away from an Article 5 convention. Okay, I'll get into a little bit more. In 1989, the Nevada legislature rescinded its call based on fraud. They said the people that testified in behalf of one gave us bad information, and we acted on bad information to apply for one, and they repealed it. From 2000 to 2010, a number of states rescinded their calls, and in New Hampshire, it took us 20 years. Mr. Everett got the ball rolling, and then he had to move away. But by 2010, we were able to rescind the state's calls. We do that by befriending people, elected officials, by information tables, by letters to the newspaper, by getting on radio. Right now, we're being outspent about $1,000 to $1. But as Mr. McManus, I don't know if he said it while he was speaking, an ounce of truth is worth a ton of lies. And I also want to point out, too, that not everybody pushing an Article 5 convention are evil. Some of them are well-intentioned. I have some friends that support it. I think that they're dead wrong on it, so I don't want to say that everybody that's pushing one has got an evil agenda. They have the same views we do, but they're incorrect, because if they think this convention can go smoothly, they're very much mistaken. So, 2011, it was sort of the beginning of this recent drive for an Article 5 convention. There was a conference at Harvard Law School. It was called Conference on the Constitutional Convention. When I got wind of this, I tried to be a panelist, because it was supposed to be both sides. And there's only two sides. You're either for one or against one. You can't have half a convention, okay? And for some reason, they didn't return my phone calls, which I made about 5 or 6 of them, or my emails. However, we got media credential through the New American magazine. So I was there for one day, and we weren't allowed to actually interview anybody inside the law school. It was done outside. And you had people on both sides of the political spectrum pushing for one. There was only one person there that I actually heard against it. Everybody else was in favor of it, right? And that was the beginning of the drive for this. 2012, a group called the Goldwater Institute promoted something called Compact for America. Now, the Goldwater Institute is named after the late Barry Goldwater, U.S. Senator from Arizona, who, by the way, was against an Article 5 convention. His son is running it, who is in favor of one. But I think old Barry would be very much against one if he were allowed today. And they had something called Compact for America, which, by the way, is unconstitutional on its face, because the states are supposed to, Article 1, Section 10, it says that when states form confederations, they need permission from Congress. So I'm not too worried about this one, because anything that takes 2 hours to explain isn't going to go anywhere when you testify. They just say, we're going to shoot this down. 2013, 2014, there's a couple of groups that came on the scene. One is called Wolfpack. Wolfpack is a left-wing, or they use the term progressive. I hate that word progressive when it applies to socialism. There's nothing progressive about socialism. Free market is where there's progress, not socialism. The word should be retrogressive. But they see how they steal words? Like they steal the word gay. You know, we sang that song the other night. You know, we kind of giggled and chuckled a little bit. That's a good word. It used to be a good word, right? The other group was a group called Convention of the States. And Mr. Mike Farris, who's a Homeschool Legal Defense Association, he's very well respected. He's a big supporter of this. He travels around the country testifying and so forth. I had a chance to confront him in a very polite way and accuse him of using fallacious reasoning. And that was kind of interesting to be able to do that. So 2015 and 2016, there was a whole bunch of states, about 37 or 38, that had applications. And our group, I'm with the group called the John Birch Society. That's what I do for full time. There are other groups, but this organization really paved the way, led the way, and we become public enemy number one. You know, when you take a strong stance for something, you're going to get some negative feedback. That means you're doing something right. And I've been an activist, a freedom activist, since 1988. And I think in the last 2 years, I've been called more nasty things by people that are supposed to be conservatives and Christians than I have by the left in 20 plus years. I've been accused of bribery. That was a beautiful one. I mean, they accused us of bribing a state senator. And when I spoke to another, he said, how much you offer him? But I've been called so many vile things that I can't even repeat them in polite company. It was amazing. So that's the old Southern expression. When you throw a rock at a pack of hogs, the one that squeals is the one that you hit, right? And I do want to point out there are lots of good people that support one, and our job is to get them to change their position, and it's happening all over the country. In fact, just a few days ago, the Republican Platform Committee, before the convention, voted against putting the Article 5 resolution, Article 5 convention on the platform. I don't know if you can see that. So here are some of the arguments used by pro-Article 5 supporters. An out-of-control federal government, yes, that is a good argument. We do have that to a large extent. We also have out-of-control state governments. And state governments have been part and parcel of this problem for over 100 years. State legislators love federal money. Some of them Republicans, some of them Democrats. They love it because if they can get money from the federal government, they don't have to raise your taxes. And you say, hey, I'm not raising your taxes, vote for me. Yeah, but I just got $1 billion from the federal government and you're paying that. See, what the federal government does is says they take money from all these people and then they give it back to you. They give you back to you about 20% of it. The rest they have to borrow from China, right? And the state legislators say, see, we haven't raised the taxes. I'm a fiscal conservative. One of the Article 5 supporters is very proud that he was able to get state money for fireworks in his town. Wait a minute now. $100,000 of taxpayers' money, I'm okay with firework display July 4th. Raise it locally. You know, I don't need to, we should be subsidizing that. Big money needs to be out of politics. When I testified, I said big money needs to be out of this Article 5 convention too, because you got people like George Soros and you got the Koch brothers that are indirectly or directly promoting this. Oh, they didn't like that. You know, when you're being outspent 1,000 to 1, and they were accusing us of well-funded fringe groups oppose it. And I said, well, I'd like to find out who these people are because I need an upgrade on my van. I'd like to get a, you know, maybe to cut me a check to help me out a little bit here. Article 5 convention cannot be a runaway. It is by nature a so-called runaway. So they think, well, if the resolution says we're only going to be here for a balanced budget amendment, once the delegates sit, they can do anything they like. They don't have to. They don't have to worry about what their state told them to do. In fact, we only had one convention. That was the first one under the Articles of Confederation. And as Mr. Hale pointed out, Article 13 of that said any changes, all states had to agree, and they only had 9 states. Now we're very blessed to get what we got. We're not lucky to get the Constitution. We're blessed to get the Constitution. But do you think the likes of George Washington and Gouverneur Morris and Benjamin Franklin will be at any future convention? They'll probably be represent about 5% of the delegates there. Do you think I'll be a delegate there? I don't think so. 3/4 of the states needed to pass any proposed amendments which would effectively stop any unreasonable amendments from being passed. People on both sides of the spectrum, left and right, say that. Well, what's unreasonable? That's a subjective term, isn't it? You know, like I said, you think an income tax is unreasonable? They passed it with an amendment over 100 years ago. I just mentioned the states lost their power when they had the direct election of senators. That was unreasonable. Prohibition. Now, prohibition was something the federal government, I think we shouldn't have addiction. We're going to be hearing from Dr. Kishore later on. Addiction was a bad thing, and it's good not to do it. But the federal government passed an amendment that shut it all down. They went and they violated. It was really a violation of the principles of the Constitution. In fact, things got so bad that they had to repeal it with the 21st Amendment. And in my opinion, that set the stage for organized crime in our state, in our country. Okay, so in states, like I said, do a lot of crazy things without any amendments. Common Core, for example. Now, one state legislator voted for Common Core. It was top down. Federal government, Bill Gates with his $6 billion and more dollars, and they went to the state educational people. They said, tell you what, it was President Obama, you take the money, race to the top money, do what you want with it, but you got to take this Common Core sight unseen. And the states, only a few states have actually got rid of it. Even these so-called conservative states. And some of these supporters of an Article 5 convention, we need to rein in the federal government. They love Common Core. Like Kasich, Governor Kasich in Ohio, and a few others.